For this lesson, we're going to be looking at transformations called reflections. And so when you hear that full sound in there, that will help you remember. That's when you're flipping a shape. So again, transformations are when we're changing things, and so we're going to be flipping our shapes on our coordinate plane. So some of the things I want to make sure that you remember as we're doing this are when you're flipping something, it's across a line of reflection. So imagine like setting a mirror down, and that's your line of reflection. So if you had a piece of paper and you set a mirror down on it, your line of reflection, depending on where you put that mirror, the image on the paper is going to look a little bit different. So your line of reflection typically is going to be on your X or Y axis, or it will be horizontal or vertical. It's not typically diagonal, but it's definitely possible. It's a little bit trickier when we get into some of those examples, but for the most part, it's going to be a basic up or down, left or right line that you're going to be reflecting across. So let's take a look at some examples here. Okay. When you want to reflect across the y-axis, remember you have to remember your x-axis is going left and right, and then your y-axis is going up and down. Okay. So if I want to reflect across the y-axis, that's going to look completely different depending on which axis I'm looking at. So you got to make sure you have that right. So reflecting across the y-axis, if this is my y-axis, if I'm laying a mirror down right there on that y-axis, I'm going to have the same space away from my mirror, or my line of reflection, or axis of symmetry is also what it's called. Then I have on this left side, I'm going to have that same distance on the right side. So there, right here, is going to be my A prime, my pre-image and my image if I'm reflecting across the y-axis. Now what if I took that same point, that same pre-image, and reflected across this axis of symmetry, or this line of reflection? Don't think about it as the axis, the x-axis or the y-axis. I want you to think about placing your mirror on that dotted line right there. So the distance from that dotted line, if I have to count out 1, 2, 3 to the left, then I'm going to start that dotted line and go out 1, 2, 3 to the right. So there's my A prime, pre-image, and now my image. Okay. So let me do one more example in this video where I'm reflecting across what we call y equals negative x. Now that's a really weird way of saying we've got a diagonal going perfectly, it's like a negative diagonal going through our coordinate plane. And that's because if y was, let's say y was 1, then x is going to be a negative version of that number, negative 1. So if you think of y being 1 and x being negative 1, well, negative 1, 1 would be right here at this point, right here on our dotted line. Or negative 3, 3, because the x has to come first. So you could flip that around even if that helps you to think of negative x equals y. Anyway, they'll tell you that, or really they'll probably just give you that picture of that diagonal. So what you can do in a case like this is count how far away we are from our dotted line, and if you want to count, you have to count those perfect diagonals. And if I'm 2 perfect diagonals away, that way for my pre-image, I'm going to be 2 perfect diagonals away on my image. So there's my A prime.